Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's District Administration Web Seminar, which is entitled Proven Tips for How to Successfully Bring New Tech to a District, which is brought to you by the generous support of our sponsor, Unruly Studios, creator of Unruly Splats. Now, before we get started, I would just like to share just a few housekeeping items with all of you today. For technical support, please use the chat panel, which you can find on the right side of your screen, then select on my name, which is Stephen Blackburn, and then type your message if you're having any technical issues, and I'll get to your questions shortly. If you don't have computer speakers, or maybe you prefer to listen privately, you can dial the phone number and access code that I'll be posting in the chat window in a few moments, so look out for that. We will also be welcoming any questions you have today with a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. To submit a question, please use the Q&A panel at the bottom right side of your screen, and then send your questions to all panelists, which should be the default option. If you don't see either of those chat or Q&A panels, just look again to the right side of your screen and then click on the expand triangle, which is located directly in front of the panel name to make sure you have access to it. Also, something important to note, if you would like to access the web seminar at a later time, you'll be pleased to know that everyone who is registered and who is attending today will receive an email with a link to the slide as well as an archive recording. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to all of you today our panelists. We have Nick Baswell, who is a tech consultant at Nova Scotia Department of Education, as well as Laura Wilson, who is a teacher for grades 6 through 8 at South Queens Middle School. And now I will hand things over to today's moderator for our webinar, Laura Watkins, who is Director of Marketing over at Unruly Studios. Hi, Lauren. Nice to have you with us today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. So we are going to get right in here and talk about our topic for the day, which is tips on how to integrate new tech across a district. In our special, before we get started, introduce yourselves to us in the chat. Tell us your name, your role at your school or district, and what your favorite summer activity is. We here on the East Coast in Boston, I know Laura and Nick are in Nova Scotia. It is super hot, 93 degrees. I am melting with no AC in my room. So if you see me sweating, that's why. So let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah, looking forward to it. And while you do that, I'm going to introduce our special guests for today. So as Stephen mentioned, we have Nick and Laura here. Nick, did you want to start off by introducing yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Baswell, and I am a technology consultant for the Nova Scotia Department of Ed. And I've been in this role for a few years now, but previous to that, I was a grade 5 teacher, and very happy to be speaking with you all today.
Awesome. And how about you, Laura?
Hey everybody, I'm Laura Wilson. I am a double specialist here in Nova Scotia. I teach both music, concert band, and physical education, and I've been rolling out the technology, so I'm looking forward to speaking with you about it.
Thank you. And I'm Lauren from the Unruly Splats team here just as your host today. So let's dive in. Nick, do you want to tell us a little bit about your districts, the districts in Nova Scotia, and the students?
Sure. So we are a province-based curriculum system, and we service students from pre-kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. And this year, we started off, fortunately, in-person learning, and we were able to continue that until May. We had about a month of a close down because of COVID cases in the province. And then fortunately, in the last week, we've been able to return to in-person learning and finish off the year. One of the things that we look forward to is getting back to more hands-on learning and more group collaborative work. In our past 5 years, we've had a mandate about incorporating more computer science into our curriculum, and we actually have outcomes based from kindergarten all the way through grade 8 with computer science, and we have a couple of high school courses where that's incorporated as well. And one of the things that we really stress is that computer science is not a standalone discipline, but it really integrates and fits well with so many other curriculum areas, and we really try to link them all together.
Awesome, thanks, Nick. And Laura, you and I chatted a little bit about this too, about the importance of 21st century learners. Anything that you want to add to sort of the context of your students?
Yeah, so I have a really fortunate opportunity to be teaching at one of the tech flagships in Nova Scotia. My school was built to try and put technology into the hands of students and really push those 21st century skills to have students coding across the board and interdisciplinary. So we have made a big push in our building with maker spaces and having coding in class. And I'm really trying to develop more ways to implement that into my program. So both music and physical education are very applied. So keeping our education opportunities genuine while keeping students active and hands-on is kind of my focus. So the technology that we'll be talking about today has been a great way to have students have some more experiences while still focusing on those 21st century skills.
Great, thank you both. And tell us, what are some of the common sort of challenges, Nick, of a district-wide tech rollout? And then I'll ask Laura kind of from a school perspective, but we'll start with the district first.
So for the district level, it's always tricky to know what you're putting out there and how much of it is going to different places. One thing that we really try to keep into consideration is teacher hesitancy. And that hesitancy comes from a few different places. Sometimes it's fear of not knowing everything about the device or materials coming out, and the idea that sometimes things aren't going to go perfectly. And with that, there's some worry around losing the classroom or classroom management behaviors that will pop up. Sometimes it's around lack of support or PD. If something brand new comes out, we want to make sure that teachers are supported and their questions are answered. And sometimes with big rollouts, those things don't happen. The teacher gets some devices at their door, and that's the end of the support. And so those we see more going on shelves rather than being used with their students. One of the things that we look for is to set expectations for the students and for the teachers. And you have to have an understanding that it won't be perfect from day one. And so we try to use an example around like buying a new stereo. So if someone gets a new stereo, either in their car or their house, the first day that music is turned up loud. You want to see how well that is. You want to enjoy that music as loud as you can. And you probably do that on the second day as well. But by the third day, you've turned that down to your normal stereo listening volume. And that's the kind of way that we think about some of these tech rollouts with our teachers is we try to instill in them the idea that yes, it will be loud and it might be a little chaotic that first 2 days as students kind of test things out and play around a little bit. But by the third time it comes out, it should be pretty regular for those students. And then that's when you can really dive into the work that you're looking to do. One other piece that we see from time to time is that teachers aren't always sure how to incorporate it into their essential curriculum. And so we need to make sure that what we're asking them to do is a good fit and that it's a good mix with the curriculum, not just, tech time on a Friday afternoon or something that they see as an extra or an addition to the curriculum that they're teaching. We want it to enhance the curriculum.
Thanks, Nick. And Laura, I know we talked a lot about the time and the lack of PD. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important to mention with the COVID-19 pandemic that a lot of staff are feeling like they've had to pivot so much and had to change what they were doing so often. So teachers very quickly with new technology, this generation of students can get frazzled or check out really quick if there are glitches. And, being able to reassure people that you have that network of support and to give yourself the grace to have that learning period and to front load it with the students so that they have the procedure under their wing as part of their digital citizenship units or interdisciplinary, have it, front loaded in a different class and then put it in an applied situation where teachers are collaborating and working together. And then also making sure that things are valid and measurable. So for me, in the gymnasium especially, I want to be able to have the students use the Splats, but then be able to record what they're doing or record progress or be able to review how the games have gone and what ways they can make improvements. So I've had a lot of successes with exit slips and peer-to-peer feedback and different learning models that way. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that. Making sure everything is measurable. It makes a lot of sense. All right, so write us in the chat, everybody who's in the audience. What are your biggest challenges with tech rollouts? Maybe they're the same, maybe they're different. Let us know in the chat, and we'd love to hear from you. And so, Nick, we're going to talk about your sort of specific steps to a successful district-wide rollout of technology. You've done this a ton of times. This is sort of tried and true, so I'm excited to walk through it. All right, so step one you have is choose your champions. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that means?
Sure. That was one thing that we learned through different rollouts, and like you said, a tried and tested method. Like we've had other rollouts that didn't go as successful as we would have liked, and so we always try and tweak that along the way to really hone in and find the successful pieces along the way. And the main thing is we need to find a group of teachers who are open to trying something new, who are flexible enough to roll when things aren't working as perfectly as we'd like it to, who are excited about it, who are honest, because we want good, true feedback. And sometimes you don't always get that. People are worried that if you say, no, we don't really love this, that there might be some negative response back. We want people to be honest. We want to hear all the success stories. We want to hear all the challenges and then really balance that all together. And we wanted to have different teachers at different levels so that we could really get a full idea and experience of how these go. And so, for example, with this Splats rollout, we looked at phys ed teachers, but we wanted to pair them with classroom teachers as well, so that we knew that there was time for that coding piece and to be able to grow. I skipped over the part in the middle, which is about student champions. And Lauren, if you could flip back 2 slides for me.
Yeah. See.
Oh, one more, sorry. There we are. So this group of students, this group of students was from 3 different grade levels, and they worked with me on using the Splats in a few different games. And it did a number of things. One, it pulled in interest from the students who saw them leave with me. They got to go back to their classrooms and talk about how much fun they had and all the different games that they were playing. But they also act as a support to the teacher because they also understand how these work. And so you don't have a teacher in isolation anymore. You have a very small yet very enthusiastic support team, which are these students who are not afraid of technology, not afraid of these new pieces, and are really excited to dive into it. And so if you can couple that with really great, knowledgeable teachers, you're off to really good feedback and a really great start. So that was our first step. We wanted to get our great teachers on board, and then we wanted to pull in those student supports along the way.
I love that. And I think we talked about this too, Laura, about one of the challenges of teachers is that they feel like they need to know everything. And so sometimes it's okay to lean on your students for help with those things, and you don't have to know everything.
Yeah, I wanted to say too, to dovetail on with what Nick said, one of the things that we've really been noticing is that this opportunity has let a lot of students shine in the gymnasium that may not have enjoyed full structured sport. So they would be a student that would, become a mentor within the group, and they might be getting more accolades or positive feedback than they might have gotten if it was a basketball game, because they can help code and help implement these games. And it's been very positive in that way.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right. And step 2, Nick.
So step 2 was trying to make sure that we gave the trial a good, honest trial. We wanted to make sure that our teachers had enough time to really get in depth with them and see what they could do. And so we wanted to make sure that when teachers signed up and were trying these, that they had a lot of time. We didn't want to give it to them for a week or for a night. We wanted to say, all right, you've got a few months. All right, you've got time before we're going to get a hold of you again and kind of see how things are going, because we know the beginning of the school year is incredibly crazy. there are so many things going on, so we couldn't say, all right, after the first 2 weeks of school, tell us all about them, because we knew that wasn't going to be enough time. We wanted people to really get involved with them. Another big part was onboarding, giving support right out of the gates. And we were able to do that with some webinars, some PD sessions, and in the Unruly Splats, they actually have really great lessons and pre-built examples. And so anytime that you're able to give kind of a pre-packaged start to teachers, that's great. You never want it to end there. You always want there to be able to be growth and expansion, but being able to start with games right away and being able to manipulate the code, then you really saw a faster beginning than some other things that we've done in the past.
Thank you. And Laura, from your perspective, what is this experience like been for you? You know, the professional development and the support and the lesson plans, what was that like?
Yeah, so we started, actually, to be totally honest, I started playing with my children at my house to start with. We were playing around with it. And then I had the opportunity to launch a PD session in-house with my staff. So my staff did the exact process that Nick's talking about. We played. So they tried out the games that were already available. Then we would manipulate. So I got them to change a part of a game. And then we talked about drag and drop code. And, you know, based on comfort levels, the teachers could, you know, proceed from there. And I really approached it the same way with my students, the champions that we talked about. I let them come in during free time and use it as kind of like a hangout place. And then once they got comfortable, we manipulated. Most of them actually came back having tried to build their own once they got their logins, which was really fun to see. And then by the time it came to their class implementation, students were a lot more comfortable. And yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it didn't have to be, because sometimes they learned a lot more from the mistakes that were being made than from having it crystal clear the whole time. So.
Absolutely. All right, and so after you start with the pilots, that's when you started to gather the feedback, right, Nick? What did that kind of process look like?
That's right. So with this pilot, we wanted to make sure that things were being used and that it was going to be a good fit for Nova Scotia, because really anything we buy, we deal in taxpayer dollars, and so we're quite accountable to the parents and supporters all around the province. So we want to make sure that whatever we put in is going to be successful. And so we thought that 80% use would be fairly successful for any kind of tool. And we wanted, again, to give that nice long time period. So we gave it, I think, about 9 or 10 months before we kind of really hit that final usage number, just to see how well the devices were being used. One thing that was incredibly helpful was accessing data from the devices. And so if you have something that can give you information back about usage, that's really great. Sometimes you've got something that won't give you feedback, but sometimes you can. So with the Splats, you're actually able to get the number of lines of code that are written by account and how many times the Splats are pressed when they're connected to that account. And so that gives us a really clear picture of how many schools are using them and how much that they're using them. And we also took into consideration external factors that were outside of teachers' hands. So in some of our schools, they were outside for phys ed as much as possible. And so we knew that the Splats weren't being used as much. We knew that with what Laura talked about, those COVID changes at the beginning of the year, that there would be a slower start to a few places. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that we had a good long time, but we also did want to make sure that we did get that 80% usage. We thought that our teachers were creative enough and had enough opportunities that they could use them if they were going to use them. And so we were able to hit that 80% mark. Getting teacher feedback was incredibly key. And we did a lot through anecdotal. Laura wrote an email to me and told me all about the Splats that were going on in her class, and that was great for us. Those are the kind of things we needed. We didn't need anything more official than that, because that honest feedback was what we needed to see to work with our next round of decision making.
Awesome. And then the last step you had was to create resources and then train other teachers in different schools in the building and then grow. So I'll actually start with Laura on this one. So what was that process like for you? Because you were involved in the actual creation of the resources and the training. And so how did you approach that?
Yeah, so it's a really unique opportunity in Nova Scotia right now because inquiry-based learning is a part of our curriculum renewal. So teachers are being prompted to have students do student-led learning where they are introduced to tasks by teachers, but then they can really ask questions and focus in on what direction they would like to take it or where they'd want to delve further. And part of that, we've developed a makerspace in our school that has a very tech-savvy teacher. And we've had some really wonderful collaborations between coding and how that can be connected to what we could do applied wise in the gymnasium. So we are looking into going through similar process with the other teachers. And like Nick mentioned, with the COVID pivot, we definitely are looking forward to getting more momentum going now that we've kind of reestablished our in-person things. Yeah, so I think the big thing for us is we have opportunities in all of our Nova Scotia curriculum where students can pick SMART goals and delve further into them. And by being able to focus on coding and being able to build these kind of relay races and games that students can work through, it's cross-curricular and it's definitely something that's going to keep growing within the province, I think.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And Nick, from your perspective at the district level, what was the process like for kind of that next step of creating the resources and training and, you know, sharing it with other teachers who hadn't used it yet?
Well, one of the big things is to be able to have teachers local to you create content. Having something show up with ready-made lessons is great, but we all know that all kinds of districts all over the US, Canada, and the world look for different things. And so those are a great starting place. But to be able to have some readily shareable information and lessons from Nova Scotia teachers was really big for us because they knew that that would fit our curriculum. They knew that that would work in our classrooms. And so that was great. And anytime that you can get a teacher local to your district with a video showing something in action, showing that, yes, this does work, you know, with all my students going on, with all the different personalities, but look at us, we're doing this. Those were huge. And if you can get those shared, we asked our teachers to share their experiences on Twitter. And that actually led really nicely into the second round of teachers that we looked for in our phase 2, because we had people asking, we had people saying, oh, I see what Laura Wilson's doing with these splats. How do I get my hands on these? How can I get some? And so that really starts some enthusiasm. They see students get involved. And so then that momentum really builds and grows. And so for our first round, we looked at 25 schools, and we had a little bit of tricky time, you know, getting the last 5 schools on board. This time, we had no problem getting 25 schools, and we still have others that would love to get them. So, you know, we're looking at a round 3 rollout to increase things even more. And so we have some of that, but we also have some professional learning opportunities. We do a big summer tech conference over 2.5 days called the Summer Learning Academy. And we have different sessions there about adding technology to your classroom, ways to use things, troubleshooting. It's a great place to learn about new things. We've shown many new items there, and Splats were there a couple times with us, which is great. And so, like the last little bullet says, like we aren't done. We just keep evolving of how we get the message out and how we pull teachers and students in.
That sounds great. I'm excited to hear about the next stage 3. And so you both have been mentioning a little bit about Unruly Spot. So we're going to kind of use it as a case study. But before we do, I wanted to share what they are. So they are big programmable floor buttons that students can program. You can see them on the boy is stepping on them right there. So they've got hardware. So students can code them using a block-based coding language to light up and make sounds. And they sense when they're stomped on so that students can actually code their own games. So things like relay races and dance games and obstacle courses and whack-a-mole. So there's the on-screen part with the coding, the splats, but then there's the off-screen part where they actually get to play the game, be active, and interact with each other. So we're all about mixing coding with active play and letting students create their own games. I always like it when our when our Unruly schools talk about Splats. So anything to add, Nick and Laura, you know, about Splats and sort of the features and highlights that you've enjoyed?
I'll jump in first, Nick. I know for our students, the role of being game master is just as beloved as participating in the game. So students are vying for 2 positions, and don't let the GIF fool you. These splats can be spread out too, and students can really book it through some of these games. So it's a super active, fun game. And I've had a lot of success building some games with students from a music standpoint too, because there are so many options of the sounds that they can make, different pitches, different instruments. The instrumentation available is crazy. And the amount of different opportunities when you vary the number of splats in a game or vary the time or amount of the game just makes the students so excited because they have so much prior knowledge and experience with tech, and they can see the possibilities pretty quickly once they understand the procedure.
And to piggyback on what Laura's talking about, in the app, it's great because they have a little bit of an emulator in there, so you can try out your code and see what it looks like on the splats on the screen before you get out and use them on the floor. And again, like, kids will run hard in these games. I've not seen one single student, all the times I've used this, go through the motions and just kind of walk through or whatever. Most kids fly through and then they try and say, okay, can I go again? I want to beat my time. I want to go faster, or I know how to do it better this time. Let me go. And they get really excited about it. I'd also say that these are really durable. You know, sometimes you wonder, can I step on them? Should I just use my hand? And I'll walk over and I'll put a big stomp down with my foot, and I'm over 200 pounds, and there's no worry that the splats won't hold up under me. And so once they see that, then they really get into running and using them. But to be able to turn on the LEDs in different colors or even individual LEDs, like, we created a math game where you stomped on the first one, it lit up 2 LEDs, you had to multiply them in your head and then run up and put in your answer for the last ones. And so we incorporated a little bit of math in with all this running and thinking. Kids had a great time.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to get that game for me. That sounds like a fun one. Yeah, and to Nick's point, in the early days of Unruly, we tested these by, like, I feel like we threw them out of a couple story building, and there's a video on YouTube somewhere of us throwing them down the stairs, so they've definitely been through their paces. Awesome. So we've been talking about this a little bit all along, but you know, Splats was a successful rollout that's still happening in the province of Nova Scotia, but kind of walk us through the full picture of sort of how you thought about rolling out Splats across the districts in Nova Scotia.
Sure. So we really wanted to start with 25 schools, and we thought that would be a nice introduction. We have 8 different regions within our full Nova Scotia province. And so we wanted to put a few in each place just to make sure that we were hitting on all the areas. And then we really wanted to see what we could do with that. And so we wanted to have a great onboarding experience because these were brand new for a number of our teachers. And so we wanted to be able to have a time where they could get to know what the splats are, hear from people who work with Unruly, and then have some information to help back that up. And so as a region, we went with the data tracking. That was big for us because sometimes you ask someone, so, hey, how was it? How'd you do? And they say, oh, great, kids loved it. We used it all the time. Oh, is that the thing sitting in the box on the shelf? Oh yeah, we haven't quite gotten them all out yet. And so you don't always get a good, accurate feedback. And so being able to have a device that gave you information as it's being used was really helpful. And we also tried to pick teachers that wouldn't just give us that lip service. We wanted teachers who were going to be really, really honest with us. They're going to tell us all the things they loved, all the things that they weren't sure about. Anytime they had connection problems or code problems, we wanted to hear about it. But having code problems led to support from Unruly, which is another really key piece. Being able to have an almost immediate support system was really great because then teachers can build that capacity, but they don't feel isolated, they don't feel out on their own. Having these preloaded games was a factor for us because you can literally take them out of the box, turn on the app, and play a game. It is that simple of connecting. And so anytime that you're able to start that way, there's only room for growth because you've overcome that barrier, that obstacle of someone saying, well, how do I put this together? How do I even start? I can't program. I've got nothing to start with. Well, with Unruly, you come with built-in examples, and so you can get started right away. as I talked about, we tried to have our teachers share their experiences and share the ones on Twitter, and that sparked a huge interest. It was really amazing to see how many people reached out to me, reached out to Laura and other teachers, and even to Unruly and say, "Hey, we saw this on Twitter. It's happening in our province. How do we get a hold of them? Like, how do we start?" And so we've had a great working relationship with Unruly that they tied it back to us, and we've been able to keep in contact with everybody and keep the same messaging going. And so that's been really good. It's not like they get one from us and one from Unruly. Like, we're all in this together, which is great. And so right now we're at 50 plus schools at the moment, and we are still looking at expanding to more. And I think the biggest success of this is that we've put a device out and it is getting used a lot. And that, I think, is a worry for anybody, that when you spend money on these devices and you get them out, is that you don't know if they're going to be used. You don't know if you have the right number of devices or things either. And so we've tried around a little bit. So for us, we started with 6 Splats in every school. And then when we started our phase 2, we brought on 25 new schools, we also upped our rate of Splats to 12 Splats, and we gave the first year Splats 6 more. And so what Laura's going to do for us, excuse me, is Laura's actually going to test out whether or not having even more helps. Is 18 a good number? Is 24 what you need, or is 12 kind of the level that we're looking for?
Awesome, thanks. And I think we'll get more into the future plans in a little bit, so I'll wait for Laura to expand on that till the end. Awesome, but I did want to pause here and talk with Laura about how you were involved in the sort of the expansion and the training and what that looked like. And you shared a photo here of, and Nick has been mentioning Twitter a lot, but you shared it on Twitter, which I love. So tell us about the process of your PD sessions and what was the reaction from teachers?
Yeah, so we had an in-house PD session to start the school year face-to-face, and our staff has a little bit of a tech background because we were a one-to-one school, which meant every student had a device in hand through various organizations. And our students do have a little bit of front loading because we had already had some training in block coding for some of the older kids. So some teachers were a little tech savvy and others were new, and some obviously new to the building with turnover. So we wanted to roll out and let the staff have a chance to have exposure to some of the possibilities before the students even arrive. So the first thing I did was a 1-hour session with the teachers where they had the opportunity to play, and we had some showdowns, and staff, they really liked whack-a-mole. I'm not gonna lie, that was their favorite one. So after they had some time to play, I started to show them different ways to manipulate the code, and just went through the same steps I would with students. And the teachers were very receptive to the possibilities, and definitely can see how, the being able to drag and drop the code and being able to, like Nick said, being able to manipulate it right on the device is definitely something that the staff enjoyed, so they could trial run their activities before playing it with the students. One of the things that we're looking forward to, because we were using iPads and we had a little bit of trouble with the iPads, but that's been updated. We've kind of seen it evolve like throughout the year as we were going, which is really exciting. So students are using Chromebooks too. So being able to access those preset games gave staff time to kind of play around and gain confidence and try to look at ways that it would be valid for their own curriculum. And then also our makerspace is a wonderful addition to our school where students can go in during their free time and build things that they're interested in technology-wise. And we have definitely had kind of a lot of excitement from the other teacher that's in that area. So he was able to, even just from his own knowledge, come in and show the staff some other different options and ways to make it usable and make it friendly and quick, because we all felt very nervous getting back to school and felt very, very leery of being inundated, and that wasn't what happened at all. So, and just to echo what was mentioned, the Unruly staff has been incredibly wonderful. I've attended several sessions, including a really awesome Unruly trivia on Twitter. And I find my favorite part about dealing with this group is that no matter what the question is, the feedback or the help is so quick and the support is so swift and approachable that I don't mind not knowing what I don't know. It doesn't make me feel intimidated, and my staff felt similar. So there's definitely some buzz about the Splats, and we're looking forward to going further with it.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, we love hearing that and love the feedback as well. We, love hearing things that we could improve on and things like that. So it's been, like you said, you've been kind of part of the evolution process. So we're excited to continue growing with you. Awesome. And Nick, this question's for you. Sort of how do you measure success sort of at a district level for the implementation? What does that look like?
So for us, looking at success over the whole province or the whole district is our device being used? Is what we put out being used? Are teachers talking about it? Are they sharing things about it, or is it just something that just kind of gets used in the background? And we found that people asking for them. So we put them out to a number of places, but then we have people wanting more and more and more of them. And so that was really easy for us to see that was something that was successful, because people wanted more of it. People saw what was going on and were interested and were engaged and really wanted to be there. And so that was one of our big things about how much they got used and how many teachers wanted in. Those were big factors for us.
Thanks, Nick. And Laura, from a kind of classroom perspective, what does success with a new technology tool or even just any tool sort of look like to you? How do you measure that?
Yeah, so building literacy and fluency with using the tech is really important. So being able to see students problem solve together, the skills, inquiry-based learning, having students ask questions purposefully to be able to have conversations or build products can be reflected back into my assessments. So that's wonderful. I've had so much feedback between students being able to say, oh, hey, your game is great. Like, what if we tried to do this? Or could we augment it this way? Or is there a way that you could change up a certain section? Having students give communication feedback through exit slips or being able to participate in different forms to just talk about their experiences and what are they looking forward to, or how are they achieving the goal that they set out for themselves based on their experience, or what was missing. Sometimes what was missing or what didn't work out could be just as valuable. So students have definitely had some self-reflection, and yeah, possibilities are endless there.
Great. Thank you so much. And how do you measure the student engagement part of it? So how do you, I guess this question is for you, Laura, how do you know that the students are engaged?
Every teacher's dream when a student comes to you and says, can we try this again? Or that was so fun, or can we bring out that, or I'm looking forward to this. Those kind of statement starters are just like music to your ears. So for me, students looking forward to participating and being excited to participate, and for our future goals, making sure that we have as many participating as possible. So it's simultaneous and different activities happening simultaneously is what we're looking for. So a lot of applied.
Great. Anything to add, Nick?
I would just piggyback on that engagement piece around students really want to be part of it. They want their hands on things. And I also find that the discipline behaviors really dropped off because people want to use them. They want to be in the room. They don't want to miss it on their turn. And so that made it a lot smoother as well.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So write us in the chat. How are you measuring student engagement just in general or with new technology so that you can decide on whether you'd like to move forward with it or expand and grow? Write us in the chat. All right. So Nick, we talked a lot about cross-curricular coding and incorporating it across the school, and Laura mentioned that she's working at a tech school. So why is cross-curricular coding so important? Why is it important that it's across all subjects?
It's really important that it's across all subjects because we don't want it to be seen as a standalone that only certain people do, that there's not one type of coder out there. And there's so many benefits to computational thinking. Being able to think sequentially and logically, being able to problem solve, not being flustered when something doesn't go right, but going back and being able to find those details, making a plan and executing that plan. And so those are really, really great reasons to have it across all different levels. You get more buy-in from teachers, because if teachers see it as something that's outside of their curriculum, it's not going to be a good fit. They want to be able to see how it integrates with what they're teaching day to day. And so being able to have that all happens, we talk about 21st century skills all the time. And so this is definitely something that we see going forward. Not necessarily that we're going to create this giant wave of coders, although we'd be just fine if we did, but it's more about the thinking behind the coding and being able to really problem solve and really dive into something. Being able to come up with a game is a great thing, a great thinking exercise. And then being able to take that idea of the game and then code it is a whole new level. And so being able to bring these worlds of being very physically active and coding was such a great mix. And we talked about a few examples. Laura talked about a music example. I gave you a math one. And so now you can really pull in classroom teachers or specialist teachers, and they can really see the value in it all. You also get more buy-in from administrators and other personnel at your district because they can see how this is used. And so again, we get away from that Friday free tech time and into an object or tool where people see how useful it is in everyday class, which is really what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add, Laura? You're not the tech teacher at the school, even though you're at a tech school. So you're the PE and music teacher. And I think it's really unique that you were one of the, original people to test out this technology. So, what are the benefits? What benefits do you see incorporating coding into your PE and music classes?
I think even more so than some of the sit-down subject areas, we spend a lot of time on social emotional learning and being able to collaborate and communicate with their peers and life skills and resiliency. And this is a resilience builder because students learn in a safe environment, a trustworthy environment, that it's okay if something doesn't go perfectly, that they have the skills to kind of be their own detective and collaborate with someone else that might have more experience or a different interest to create something that's amazing. And I think it really establishes with students or reinforces with students the interconnectedness of lifelong learning and what they're doing in school and how, we are doing some math and phys ed today because guess what? Being able to measure things in phys ed shows you progress. Or yeah, music, we're doing some math and music because guess what? Music is mathematical and it is all connected and enable for them, in order for them to be able to develop a lifelong learning motivation, that they should, keep continuing to pursue their personal interest and be someone like me that found a job spending the day trying to get students to fall in love with my two favorite things, athletics and music. So maybe their favorite thing is just around the next corner when they start coding.
If I could jump into one more time, it also helps pull your staff together, because if you're able to pull the phys ed teacher with the classroom teacher, math teacher, language arts teacher, then you get to see some more conversations happening in the staff room, in the hallways, and so you get to see a more connected staff as well.
And we're co-creating criteria too. So like we're looking at the end goal of what that subject area might be trying to assess, and then we're kind of seeing what outcomes match up with what they're trying to assess and how that can be applied through Splats. So it's a really, really healthy way to develop your practice.
Absolutely. And I love that you talked about connecting teachers in the building too, Nick, because that's a big part of our, what brings us joy too, is seeing other teachers collaborating in a building. And we love seeing that. Awesome. And some of our last questions to wrap up here are, what are your favorite tech learning tools? And feel free to write us in the chat to let us know what your favorite tech tools are. Nick, these are a couple of yours. Anything to highlight here?
Well, it's a great list. We love different kind of robots, like the Dash robots are lots of fun. They come with a huge personality, which is a great thing. Microcontrollers like the Microbit and Circuit Playground Express, we can kind of build out larger scale things. we wanted to add a few things that you just needed a computer, just needed a device. So block-based coding in Scratch or coding and 3D design in CoSpaces are really, really fun things. And then the Splats. And the really cool thing about the Splats is that you really get to mesh that being physical with technology. One of the biggest knocks about tech right now is that, oh, all you do is sit down and all you do is code and sit. And so this is something that you really get up and get moving. And if you can combine a couple of these, then you're really rolling. So if you used a microbit and you made a step counter, and then you wear it while you play one of your Splat games, then you really get to gather some data that then you can take to math class and you can graph out and you can chart, and then you can write a procedural piece in language arts about how you play your game, some nonfiction text as well. And so then you really see those things come together. But yeah, those are some of our favorite tech tools, or mine anyway.
Thanks, Nick. All right, so we're gonna watch a quick video of how the Splats work in action. This is a grade 3 class, and they're playing 4 corners. So you'll notice that when the splat in the one corner goes out, that means that the student has to do X. So some teachers say, okay, they have to answer a math problem or they have to use the word of the day. And in this case, it's they have to do 5 jumping jacks. So let's see what happens.
Again for you guys. Yeah. You ready? One more time. Okay, get ready. Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Which one went up?
So we find that actually PE teachers are super creative with modifying games. This is just an existing game in our app that comes sort of out of the box. 4 corners, everyone knows and loves it. It's one of my favorite games. But what I love about it is that it's so adaptable. You can do whatever you want. You know, if when the corner goes out, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily out. You can make up the rules to be whatever you want. So, yeah, one of my favorites.
Again for you guys. Yeah.
There we go. So we're all about, as Nick said, mixing active play and physical movement with computer science and coding, and also collaboration. Laura mentioned the SEL aspects. We love seeing students code together in small groups and working together on problems and debugging things. So that's a big part of who we are. And you'll notice in Laura's photo, she had iPads and Chromebooks. So our app, our coding app, works on Chromebooks and iPads, as well as pretty much any laptop with a Chrome browser. So it's pretty adaptable to whatever technology you have in your school. And it connects with the physical spots via Bluetooth. All right, so closing up, Laura, you've already talked a lot about this, but any other things you want to add about how you're using Splats to mix coding and active play in your PE and music classes?
Yeah, I think it just kind of became a way to quickly dive into some applied. So for my students in my music class, we were able to take our 6 Splats and make them into half steps so students could talk about the difference between, or like the way that a scale is built in music. So we did some music theory activities with those. For phys ed, we're still kind of building how that's going to look in full implementation. They definitely did a demo. They've definitely gone through drop coding. My big thing for phys ed is I want to keep building and try to find that sweet spot of when I have the most amount of students active. So my students are very, very excited to use it. The wait times right now, it does definitely, it's something that we're going to work on. So trying to find the right amount of Splats is where I'm at in phys ed. Though the activities, the students are so excited they're developing confidence in building their own, but they definitely enjoy manipulating what's in the locker.
Awesome. And the locker is the existing games that we have in our app. Just put those on the line. Awesome. And these are some of the photos that you shared with me, Laura. What are they doing here? What game are they playing?
This is one of my phys ed classes that have been split into groups, and the groups are having showdowns with race in place. So they have a device at each of the groups, and they were having set time piece. Students have to step back and forth on the splats as quickly as possible and try to get the most steps. And yeah, and so they were trading off, and they got to manipulate what I think they did. They were changing the end sound, and then in different rounds we did different length of time too that they could race in place. So it was a very fun showdown for the students for sure.
All right, and you did touch on this a little bit, future plans, kind of testing out, you know, what's the perfect number. Any other future plans?
That's our big one. We want to keep going out and getting as much capacity as we can. We want to get as many schools involved with this as we can. And like we did mention, we are going to do some testing with Laura to try and figure out, you know, how many splats should there be in our schools for them to be the most successful. And so she's graciously accepted to try out a couple things and give us some feedback and see how that goes. But we're working with Unruly. We've got some different things going on. Like there was Splat Madness and Olympic things. So there's lots of the Splat Olympics, and so there's lots of those fun things to help drive awareness. And with the game locker being able to share games as well, that's a really big thing. So we're hoping that our teachers will continue to create and share some content that specifically matches up with our curriculum here, and then just grow capacity. It's been great so far.
And next up for me, I'm looking at building some adapted physical education plans for students that have mobility issues. Like I have a student that is currently in a wheelchair but does have partial use of one of his hands, and he's been starting to get excited about splats, and we're seeing how that can be kind of built into his programming. And yeah, it's a very accessible and easy to maintain piece of equipment. So looking forward to it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we have a number of special education teachers who are using Splat, so that's great to hear. I'm excited to hear what you do with it. Awesome. And last, just to close up here, Nick and Laura mentioned a lot of our activities and our sort of competitions, and so that's sort of how we work as a membership. So you're not just getting the physical splats in the app, but you're also getting ongoing coaching and professional development sessions, all access to all of our events, lesson plans. We love to do slide decks for teachers and student competitions. So we sort of offer it as a full kind of program. Nick, anything to add about sort of how it's been to work with our team and all the things that are included in the membership?
It's been really great working with the Splats team, and I remember talking to my director the very first time, and I said, they won't just sell us as many as we want. It's the strangest thing. They want to make sure their product is being used, and it was really refreshing that, you know, we were working with a company that wanted their stuff being used. It wasn't just about getting as much out the door as possible, but it was about getting stuff out that was going to be in the hands of teachers and students and being used. Having devices that are under warranty and be able to be shipped back and replaced. And really, like we talked about, the biggest thing was the support for teachers. Being able to have that onboarding, being able to email or text messages in and get help with code or just support with planning out games. Unruly is going to be a part of our Summer Learning Academy this year, and so we'll be able to keep building on that. But to be available for these things is really great, and you don't find that with everybody you work with, every partner, and so that's been a really great piece from Unruly.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll open it up to Q&A now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to write me in the chat, or I think there's a Q&A box as well down there. And if anybody is on social media too, feel free to add us on Twitter. And I think Nick and Laura both have Twitter too. Feel free to put your Twitter handles in the chat if you want to make some friends on the line here. And I'm sure they'd appreciate that. Awesome. Great. So one person is asking about the applications in math. Nick, you mentioned the math game. Did you want to just sort of explain what that looks like?
Sure. So we had 6 splats. Let me see if I can remember this perfectly. So we had 6 splats, and you stepped on the first one, and then it pulled a random number between 1 and 9, and it would light the individual LEDs or flash the LEDs on the 2 splats, and that's what you had to multiply together. And then you came up to the next 2 splats, which we had coded for 1s and 10s, and as many times as you stepped on the 1s or as many times you stepped on the 10s, it would add that up together and then have your final answer. And as you stepped on the final splat, it compared your final answer to the question that it asked, and if you got the right answer, then it lit up and gave your team a point. And so that was for grades 3, 4, 5 multiplication.
I love that. We also had another educator who was using them for a place value holder. So sort of showing that, like, you know, once you go beyond 9, now you have the, you know, second place value house. And so they were using the splats to light up the LEDs to then show that it would move over to the next splat for the second number. Just sort of teaching that deeper connection learning. Awesome. And for folks who are asking about pricing, we work directly with schools and districts. We have sort of a number of tiers. I know Nick talked about starting with 25 schools. So depending on however many schools or teachers in the buildings that you'll be using, that's sort of how we work out pricing with, you know, with tech directors and with schools. And so we have just a quick survey that I can link in the chat to in a little bit. If you're interested in getting pricing, we can get you a custom quote. Awesome. Okay, and if there's no other questions, I'm going to pass it back to Stephen.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, again, you know, thank you, Nick and Laura, for your insights and you sharing your experience with us, and Lauren, of course, for leading today's discussion. We really appreciate your time here today and sharing your expertise. And, you know, that said, I would also like to thank our attendees for joining us today as well. For those who enjoyed our presentation, there are many more upcoming web seminars like this one that are provided by District Administration, which is the leader in editorial coverage of news as well as trends, in addition to current issues in K-12. Our wide range of readers here at DA, they subscribe for free and they stay up to date with us through our print magazine, as well as the digital edition, as well as our newsletters, which includes DA Daily, which is our daily newsletter, and of course, web seminars like this one. And for those of you who would like to watch this web seminar again, or, you know, for those of you who, you know, believe that the solutions that were provided here today would be helpful to your colleagues, you'll be pleased to know that an archive recording of this web seminar will be available at the URL that your browser will automatically be directed to following this webinar, so look out for that. And you can also expect to receive an email from our team at DA at some point tomorrow, which will include a link to all the slides as well as the on-demand video. So with that, on behalf of District Administration, this is Stephen Blackburn. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your summer. Take care, be well, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you. And thanks to Nick and Laura for joining us. Really enjoyed hearing your stories. Have a great night.